All right, ready to dive into a question that's puzzled, well, just about everyone.
Let me guess.
Why did history unfold so differently on different continents?
Ah, the big one.
And we're going right to the source. Jared Diamond's guns, germs, and steel. And we want to understand the roots of global inequality, not to justify it, of course.
Of course.
But get this, the shapes of continents played a role. Even something as specific as plant domestication.
You're going back, what, 13,000 years?
That's where Diamond starts, yep.
Huh.
He talks about this New Guinean politician, Yali, who asked, why do you white people have so much cargo and we New Guineans have so little?
A simple question with, well, a lot packed into it.
Exactly. And I love that Diamond points out that New Guineans are intelligent, incredibly resourceful.
Thriving in a tough environment. It's not about individual smarts, is it?
Clearly not. So if it's not climate, not race, then what is it about?
Well, Diamond points to food production, farming and herding, but it's not just about having enough to eat.
So not just about the best crops or cows.
Think of it this way. How much free time do you have compared to someone who has to grow all their own food?
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Food surpluses mean larger populations, specialized jobs, scribes, inventors, and ultimately powerful political structures. That's how societies develop.
So just luck of the draw where you could grow stuff?
Geography matters for sure. Look at Eurasia, Europe and Asia combined. They had a head start.
What made Eurasia so special? Good soil or something?
More like domesticable plants and animals. They just had way more.
Really?
Take the Fertile Crescent, abundance of large seeded grasses, wheat, barley.
The stuff civilizations are built on.
Exactly. They're founder crops, the basis of everything that came after.
But didn't other places have, well, some plants they could work with?
They did, but not the same diversity, not the same abundance. The Americas had corn, which is fantastic, but not the same range of options to really fuel that agricultural revolution.
Okay, so Eurasia had the plant game down. What about animals? Lots of friendly beasts roaming around.
Ah, that's where it gets even more interesting. You'd think any animal could be domesticated, right?
With enough patience, I always assumed so.
Not quite. Diamond lays out specific characteristics.
Oh, like what?
Think about zebras. Strong, related to horses, but notoriously stubborn.
So not just about size and strength. Temperament matters.
Exactly. Zebras are way too flighty. Lots of seemingly ideal candidates didn't pan out.
So which animals did make the cut then? What gave Eurasians that edge?
Think the big five. Cows, sheep, goats, pigs, and horses. Not just food, but wool, leather, power for plowing. Even transportation.
Horses, I bet that gave them a huge advantage in warfare, like having ancient tanks.
It's true. Eurasian societies had the power to expand and conquer.
So we see this food production advantage leading to larger populations, specialized jobs, political structures.
Domino effect.
But wait, there's more, right?
You bet. The very shape of Eurasia played a role in spreading innovation.
Hold on. The layout of the land mattered.
Picture this. Eurasia has this long east-west axis, which means similar climates across vast distances.
So crops, livestock, ideas, they could spread more easily.
Way more easily. Compare that to the Americas, north-south axis.
Yeah.
Drastically different climates. Much harder to spread those innovations.
So like a superhighway versus, I don't know, horse and buggy.
You got it. Even a mountain range or desert could be a roadblock. Those limitations could have lasting consequences for those societies.
Geography as a highway or roadblock.
Hmm.
Amazing. But okay, food, animals, layout of the land. What else?
Let's just say another player in this game of global dominance, a rather unpleasant one.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What could it be?
Germs.
Germs. You're kidding, right? Tiny microbes influencing history?
Oh, absolutely. All those domesticated animals in Eurasia.
Yeah.
Close contact led to some nasty crowd diseases evolving. Smallpox, measles, influenza.
Oh no, like an invisible weapon.
Exactly. Eurasians built up some immunity over time, but when they started exploring, conquering other parts of the world,
They brought those germs with them.
and those germs weren't so friendly to populations that had never encountered them.
Devastating, especially for Native Americans.
Tragic example. European diseases wiped out huge chunks of the population, making conquest far easier, like an invisible weapon that rewrote the rules of engagement.
So not just guns and steel, but these armies of microbes. It's mind-blowing and honestly a little disturbing.
For sure. And it all comes back to Yale's question. Why did Europeans end up with so much cargo? We see that head start in food production, the interconnectedness of Eurasia.
And the impact of those, well, invisible armies. But is there more to it? Didn't things like writing and political organization play a role?
Absolutely. Writing, the alphabet, crucial for record keeping, spreading knowledge, developing more sophisticated forms of organization.
So food, germs, technology, political organization, even writing, it all seems connected, leading to Eurasia's dominance. But before we jump to conclusions,
Right. We need to look closer at some of Diamond's specific examples.
he really gets into the nitty-gritty of domestication, both the successes and failures. And we need to understand how innovation actually spread.
Back for more. Ready to explore some more fascinating details from Diamond's book.
You know, when we talked about domestication before the break, it really made me think about all the things I took for granted. I mean, I thought most animals could be domesticated with enough effort.
It's a common misconception. Diamond really breaks it down. He talks about the specific traits that make an animal suitable.
Yeah, the whole zebra thing, it really surprised me. Who knew they'd be such a tough nut to crack?
It's more than just being stubborn. You need things like adaptability, the ability to breed in captivity, even a social structure that humans can work with. You know,
It's incredible how these small, seemingly small differences could have such a huge impact on history. Like, wow.
Diamond uses the Fertile Crescent, ancient Mesopotamia, as this prime example. They just happen to have these large, relatively docile animals, available.
Like sheep, goats, cows. But those seem like, I don't know, kind of obvious choices, right?
They do now. But remember, thousands of years ago, people were experimenting, figuring out what they could control.
And those early successes in the Fertile Crescent, they must have had like this ripple effect, like they unlocked a whole new level of civilization.
Precisely. That domestication of those plants and animals, it spread, giving societies this massive advantage in terms of food production and, well, everything that followed.
But I'm guessing, I mean, people in other parts of the world tried to domesticate animals too, right? They weren't just like sitting around waiting for Eurasia to figure it out.
Of course, Diamond talks about how the Americas had llamas and alpacas. They were great for wool, transportation, but their range of options just wasn't as diverse.
So why was that? Was it just bad luck that the Americas didn't have as many, well, domesticable animals?
It comes down to biogeography, the types of animals that were present to begin with. Plus, the Americas experienced megafauna extinctions at the end of the last ice age, which, well, wiped out even more potential candidates.
So they lost even more options. It's almost like the deck was stacked against them from the start.
Those extinctions probably had a huge impact on those societies. It's a powerful example of how these seemingly unrelated events can have ripple effects throughout history.
Okay, so we've got domestication as like a key factor in this whole story, right? But how did those innovations spread? Did they just like travel on their own?
Now that's where Diamond really shines. He points out that the shape of Eurasia, with its long east-west axis, and consistent climates, was like this fast track for spreading crops, livestock, and ideas.
So innovations could travel farther and faster. I mean, it's like comparing a high-speed train to a horse and buggy.
Precisely. He contrasts this with the Americas, where that north-south axis created this much more challenging environment for those innovations to spread.
I'm really starting to see how geography really acted as this highway or roadblock for innovation. It's fascinating, but also a little bit frightening how much influence it had.
And those roadblocks, those geographic limitations, they could have lasting consequences for those societies. They could get stuck while others raced ahead.
You know, it's amazing how Diamond weaves together geography, food production, the spread of ideas, and even those invisible armies of germs. And speaking of germs, that was one of the most unsettling yet captivating parts of the book. I mean, who would have thought microbes could play such a pivotal role?
It's a point that often gets missed in these traditional history books. As we were discussing earlier, the close bond between Eurasians and their livestock had this, well, unexpected consequence. Some pretty nasty diseases.
Yeah, smallpox, measles, the flu, not exactly light dinger conversation.
No, but definitely historically significant. Imagine this. Europeans set out to explore and conquer, unknowingly unleashing these diseases on populations that had no immunity.
And I'm guessing the results were, well, devastating, especially for Native Americans.
It's a tragic example. European diseases, they decimated Native American populations, paving the way for conquest, like this invisible weapon that rewrote the rules of engagement.
It really makes you realize how interconnected human history is with the natural world. It's not like it was intentional warfare, it was just a consequence of the different paths these societies took.
Precisely. But there's another piece of the puzzle we haven't really explored yet. Writing. such a fundamental building block of civilization.
I've always been fascinated by how writing developed. It seems like such a leap forward for humanity. Does Diamond dive into that at all?
He certainly does. And he makes some really interesting observations about how writing evolved and the advantages it gave to those societies that had it.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the scoop on writing? Was it something that just kind of popped up everywhere at the same time?
Not quite. Unlike some other technologies, writing didn't just spontaneously appear in multiple locations.
Mm.
It had, well, a few independent origins, and then it spread from there.
So it's not like people were just coming up with the idea of writing on their own. It was more of this shared innovation.
It seems that way. The concept of writing would spread, and then different societies adapted it to their own languages and needs.
That makes sense. I can't even imagine trying to invent a writing system from scratch.
Early writing systems were definitely more complex than what we're used to. Diamond talks about how Sumerian cuneiform, it was less about expressing ideas, more like a shorthand for record keeping.
So no ancient novels then, more like grocery lists and tax documents.
Exactly. It took time for those systems to evolve.
So how did writing spread from those early origins? Was it a gradual process or did it happen, more rapidly?
It was a mix of factors. Trade, conquest, the influence of powerful empires, they all played a role. Diamond uses the example of the alphabet, which originated only once, but then spread like wildfire, throughout Eurasia.
You mean like the alphabet we're using right now, the one that seems so basic to us?
The very same. It turns out it has a pretty fascinating backstory. Its simplicity and flexibility made it incredibly adaptable, easy to spread.
It's amazing to think about how something we take for granted, like the alphabet, could have such a huge impact on the course of history, like a hidden force, right?
It highlights that power of human ingenuity. These seemingly small innovations can have far-reaching consequences, leading to these massive changes over time.
We've been focusing a lot on Eurasia and, their head start, but Diamond doesn't just stop there. He looks at the unique histories of other continents, including Australia and the Americas.
I appreciate that about Diamond's approach. It's this truly global perspective. He's showing how different environments, starting conditions, they influence societies around the world.
Let's venture beyond Eurasia then. I've always been intrigued by Aboriginal Australian culture. It seems so different.
Australia, it's a fascinating case study. Diamond points out it's the only continent where, in modern times, all the native peoples still lived as hunter-gatherers. They didn't develop agriculture, metalworking, complex political systems in the same way as other societies.
That's such a stark contrast to what happened in Eurasia. What factors contributed to those differences? Was it simply, I don't know, isolation?
Diamond attributes it to, well, a number of things. The limited range of domesticable plants and animals, the arid climate, and yes, the relative isolation of the continent.
So it sounds like the environment itself presented some serious challenges, making it difficult for those societies to develop, along the same lines as Eurasia.
Exactly. He argues that the lack of domesticable plants and animals made it much harder to create food surpluses, which, as we've seen, are crucial for larger populations and specialized labor.
It really makes you think about how something as simple as the availability of a few plants could have such a huge impact on a society's trajectory, like a butterfly effect, rippling through time.
It really underscores the connection between human history and the environment. We often think of progress as separate from nature, but Diamond shows how deeply intertwined they truly are.
Okay, so Australia faced some unique challenges. What about the Americas? We touched on them earlier, but I'm curious to hear more about how their story unfolded.
The Americas are fascinating because they developed their own independent centers of agriculture and complex societies, but their path was distinct from Eurasia's.
We talked about, that limited range of domesticable animals and that north-south axis that hindered the spread of innovation. But were there other factors at play? What made their story, unique?
Diamond points out that food production started later in the Americas compared to Eurasia. And get this, he suggests that the types of crops they domesticated, while valuable, didn't offer the same nutritional benefits as those cereal grains that fueled Eurasian agriculture.
So it wasn't just about having agriculture, but the specific types of plants and the nutritional value they provided.
Precisely. Even seemingly small details could have significant long-term consequences. It all adds up to this complex and interconnected tapestry of factors that shaped their history.
It's amazing to think about how geography, food, technology, even germs, they're all these threads in this grand tapestry of history, like a giant puzzle, and we're slowly putting the pieces together.
That's exactly what Diamond wants us to see. He encourages us to look beyond simple explanations and embrace the complexity, the interconnectedness of human history.
This whole discussion about, different continents developing in unique ways, it raises a question for me. Does that mean history is, I don't know, predetermined? If a society faces limitations, are they destined to stay at a certain level of development?
It's a thought-provoking question. Diamond, he grapples with that very idea in the book. While geography, environment are hugely influential, he doesn't believe they dictate everything.
So there's still room for human agency, for societies to, make choices and overcome those limitations.
Absolutely. Diamond rejects the idea that geography is destiny. He sees a role for culture, innovation, even random events in shaping the course of history.
It's a combination of, the hand we're dealt and the choices we make. It's both nature and nurture playing out on this grand scale.
That's a great way to put it. And it leads to, well, even bigger questions. Questions about responsibility, progress, and the future of human societies.
We've uncovered a lot of ground here, from the surprising power of, domesticable plants and animals to the impact of geography on the spread of innovation. And of course, who could forget those invisible armies of germs?
It's been an incredible journey, tracing those threads back, thousands of years of history. But now we need to bring it back to the present.
Right. We've explored the past, but what does it all mean for us today? Join us for the final part of our deep dive as we explore the implications of Diamond's work for the modern world. We'll grapple with those big questions about progress, responsibility, and what it all means for the future of humanity. Back for the final part of our deep dive into guns, germs, and steel. We've talked about domesticable plants and animals, the impact of geography, those, well, rather unsettling germs.
Right. And now the big question, what does all this history mean for us, today?
What are the takeaways? How does Diamond's analysis help us understand the world we live in now?
He argues that understanding these deep historical roots of inequality is vital for tackling the challenges we face in, well, the 21st century.
So not just an academic exercise, this knowledge has practical applications.
Oh, absolutely. For example, he challenges that idea that differences in wealth and development between nations are just down to, I don't know, intelligence or work ethic.
Which is, as we've said, a pretty common assumption, but flawed.
Exactly. Diamond reminds us those disparities are largely a product of, well, historical and geographical factors playing out over thousands of years.
Like having that head start in food production or being on a continent with that east-west axis.
Precisely. And those advantages or disadvantages they've compounded over time, leading to the world we see today.
Okay, so if those advantages are so deeply rooted, does that mean it's impossible to change things? Are some countries just, I don't know, stuck being poor while others stay rich?
Diamond, he doesn't believe in geographical determinism. He says that geography and environment play a big role, but they don't dictate everything.
So there's still hope?
Definitely not all doom and gloom. He emphasizes the importance of things like institutions, policies, even individual choices in shaping a nation's destiny.
So we might be dealt a certain hand, but we still have a say in how we play it.
Great way to put it. And it sparked these important conversations about things like foreign aid, development strategies, how we create a more equitable world.
I'm also curious what Diamond says about technology. We talked about how it played a major role in Eurasian dominance. But what about the future of technology? Is he optimistic?
He's cautiously optimistic. He recognizes technology's power to solve problems, improve lives, but also cautions that it can worsen inequality, create new risks.
So it's this double-edged sword. Force for good, but also potential for, well, destruction.
Exactly. We need to be mindful of how we develop and use new technologies, thinking about those long-term consequences.
Crucial message, especially in a world, well, obsessed with the newest gadgets and those quick fixes.
He reminds us technology isn't a cure-all, and we need to address those underlying social, economic, environmental issues driving inequality and instability.
Not just about inventing the next cool thing, but about using technology wisely, ethically, solving real problems.
And that requires a holistic view, taking into account the interconnectedness of, well, human societies, the environment, the technologies we create.
One thing that really struck me in Guns, Germs, and Steel was that emphasis on interconnectedness. It's like Diamond is constantly reminding us that we're all part of this, well, this web of life, this grand historical narrative.
It's a key takeaway. Move past those simplistic explanations and embrace a more nuanced, interconnected view of the world.
Not just about individual nations, cultures. It's about how all these factors have shaped, well, humanity as a whole.
And that interconnectedness is even more crucial now in the 21st century. Globalization, climate change, emerging technologies, they're rapidly reshaping our world.
So, in a way, Diamond's book is this call to action, a reminder that we need to work together, to solve these big challenges.
Absolutely. Understanding the past, it's not just about satisfying curiosity, it's about empowering us to create a better future.
That's a hopeful message. Makes me wonder, if Diamond were writing guns, germs, and steel today, what would he add? What new insights or warnings might he offer?
Interesting thought. Given today's challenges, like climate change, I imagine he'd explore how those forces could reshape the global landscape. Maybe even more profoundly than, well, those factors he originally examined.
It's a bit daunting to think about, but also essential. Can't just ignore these issues and hope they go away.
He'd probably urge us to apply the same long-term thinking, the same holistic analysis that he used to understand the past, to these new challenges.
Like he's giving us a toolkit, a new way of thinking to navigate these complexities.
And he'd remind us that just as past societies shaped our world today, our choices will shape the world of tomorrow.
A lot to ponder. We've gone deep into guns, germs, and steel the roots of inequality, impact of geography, the role of technology, even those, well, microscopic but mighty germs. A journey through time, but also a reflection on the challenges and opportunities we face today.
Diamond challenges us to think beyond easy answers, embrace complexity, recognize the interconnectedness of human societies, the natural world.
He reminds us that while we're products of our history, we're also the architects of our future. So, what are your takeaways? What will you do with this knowledge? Something for all of us to consider as we continue exploring and discovering. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.